Alrighty.
Yeah.
And 3. Alrighty. 2.
Yeah.
2 and 1.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another week of And We're Live.
Good job.
Are we live?
And we are live.
Fantastic. I am trying to switch off something because I'm hearing feedback. So give me a second. There we go. All right. Weird. I was hearing feedback and I'm still hearing feedback. It's weird. Are you hearing feedback, MC?
No, not at all.
Okay, I'm not hearing it anymore. It's gone. Weird. Okay, wonderful. That's such as the world of technology. So good to see everyone again. Welcome to another week of And We're Live. My name is Tachi, or Dr. Tachi. I'm a media professor, a filmmaker, a media content producer. I am also a journalist, and I'm joined here with my co-host. Show your face, Curtis.
Absolutely. What's going on, everyone? How are you?
Fantastic. Curtis Brooks, CBMP. Hey, what does CBMP mean? Share with us.
Let me see. It means Curtis Brooks Media Productions.
Oh, wow. I was like, I thought that's a new kind of newfangled degree. I was like, I need to go get one of those CBMPs.
Well, I couldn't go on screen. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, there's Dr. Tachi, and then there's just Curtis Brooks. So I had to make it look good. So.
But Curtis Brooks is enough.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Wow, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for another week of this great conversation that we're having into the land of live stream and video. It is everything.
It is. It absolutely is.
It is. So this week, what are we talking about this week for this half hour?
We're talking about live stream. Semicolon, yes. Easy or not.
Okay. Live stream. Okay. Easy. It's or a not. Question.
Well, yeah, it absolutely is a question, because I think that as we were discussing and preparing for the show, I think some people think live stream is too easy, or they have, just different ideas about live streaming, and not all good things, but it can be easy depending on what your goal is. If you're just like, hey, everybody, what's going on?
Now that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. So if you're like, hey, what's going on? My name is Curtis and blah, blah, blah. And you're not really caring about the reach or what the outcome is, then it's easy. But today we're talking about ACA. And that stands for Audience-Centered Approach. And Dr. Tachi is going to tell us more about that. So again, welcome to the show, guys. We're talking about live stream, easy or not.
But it sounded like, remember back in the day with Ripley's Believe It or Not?
Yes, absolutely. That was a great show.
It was a great show.
Yeah.
So this is live stream, easy or not.
Or not. We need like an English accent now.
Yeah, easy or not. There we go.
Absolutely.
So let's foray a little bit into this. So as Curtis talked about, this is an audience-centered approach, ACA. Think about this every time you do a video or go live, because at the end of the day, you're not doing it for you. You are doing it to engage your audience, because there's some message you want other people to gain, and you're doing it for them, basically. So if you're doing it for them, wouldn't you want to keep them at the front of your mind when you're doing it? I would think so. That was a hypothetical question. You don't have to answer that. Well, the answer is yes.
Yeah,
you want
absolutely.
to. The answer is yes, you want to. So in this audience-centered approach, you need to, it's not only about you. Remember, you're there to deliver a message on something that's of interest to you, but you need to make sure not only that it's of interest to your audience, but even if it's something that is not necessarily traditionally of interest to your audience, that you make it of interest to your audience, that you make your audience take
Right.
stake in whatever it is, right? Because not everything is for everybody. Not every topic is for everyone. But guess what? If you keep an audience-centered approach and in your delivery, the way you do it, which we'll talk about later on, you can make watching grass grow the most interesting live stream on earth,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Jay is here. Jay, welcome. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us for another week, episode 2 of And We're Live. So it's good to see you. Thank you for being here. We're talking about live streaming. Easy? So before we get into the nitty gritty of it, let's talk about, so let's answer the question. MC, is it easy?
Again, as I mentioned in the intro,
Yes.
it depends on what your outcome is or what kind of results you're looking for. Because um, as a business owner, you're going to be looking for different results as opposed to someone who doesn't own a business, maybe just doing it for fun or just kind of just want to reach friends or talk about maybe not necessarily or maybe not necessarily have an audience centered approach, as Tachi mentioned, ACA. Uh, it can be easy if you're not necessarily looking for a particular result. You're just going,
Okay.
you're just going live. I think it's
Okay.
easy in that way. But as we will further discuss, if you are really looking for that audience center approach, which Tachi, in our preparation for the show, she mentioned, I thought that was really fantastic. Just the acronym and just what it means, because it just really kind of hits to the point. If you are trying to focus on that audience centered approach, I think there's a lot more work to it. So it's not necessarily easy, but I think once you get your workflow into place, it can be easy, but not necessarily easy, because there's a lot more to it.
Now that makes sense, and I know that you mentioned this in the intro, but what I
Right.
get was wanting you to get at was for you personally. Is
Oh,
it
for me
easy?
personally.
Yeah, yeah. So
Ah,
instead, you
hmm.
lambasted me. Said, as I
Right,
said
right,
in the
right.
intro, I'm like, I'm asking you something specific. So seriously, for you, is it easy? Does it come, quote, naturally to you?
I think that for me, it's it does come easy, but it still doesn't take away the workload that's involved in it, because I think that
Okay.
uh, it's one of those things where it's kind of, I've kind of created a workflow, but I know that I need to start that particular workflow at a certain time. And if I don't start
Mm.
that workflow at a certain time, it can get very tedious. And at least it's not necessarily tedious, but all of a sudden, now that you're rushing, it does
Uh-huh.
feel tedious. And it's like you have all these different things to do in preparing for the show, which we'll kind of discuss shortly. But yeah, for me, I think that it's easy, but again, it's having a workflow, and that workflow makes it easy, and just kind of just following that workflow. But essentially, without a workflow, or just starting too late in that workflow, or just not being responsible with your time, it can be very tedious and not so easy.
Okay, tell the truth and shame the
Right, right.
devil. That's exactly it.
Absolutely,
That's exactly
absolutely.
it. That's
Right.
exactly it. So before we go on, let me say, hey, we have a couple of people joining us on Periscope. I see Daryl W. Hutton. Hey, how are you? And is this my friend Steady Divine? Coach Steady, how are you? All the way from, wait, you're in Zambia. So I hope all is well. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And of course, we have Jay on Facebook Live. Guys, welcome to the show. We're talking live stream. Easy? And it's a question mark. So let me answer that in terms of whether I think it's easy or not. For me personally, I in terms of the ability to get up and talk in front of a group of people, that's never been something that is hard for me at all. At all. However, it's tedious. So I wouldn't say that it
Right.
is difficult for me, but I would say it's tedious because you guys know when I do Mediascope, it takes me basically a good 3 days to gather all of the material that I'm
Right.
going to use. I have to, from that end of it to making sure the equipment works properly and testing anything I need to do, all the way down to selecting my outfit and selecting what makeup I'm going to wear. So it's not that it is very hard, but it is tedious. It can be tedious. So this is something you need to think about in terms of live streaming. People make it seem like, oh, it's a lot of fun and it is great and a fantastic way to connect with people, audience, your customers. However, there's work involved. And if we're looking at ACA, remember, ACA is that audience-centered approach. If we're looking at keeping the audience at the center of your minds or the front at all times, then you really, really need to respect your audience and make sure that you are preparing. And that, my friends, is what today's half hour is about.
Well said.
Preparing. Thank you. Well said for you too.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Oh, and let me welcome, Sharice, the AD. Thank you. And Daryl, thank you for inviting followers. Go ahead, Curtis.
Oh, okay.
Oh, were you going to say so? I thought you were going to say something. I apologize.
No.
Okay. Well, then, shall I keep going?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so Curtis has said that I should keep going, and I'm going to do that. So what we're going to talk about today is actually selecting your topic. So what we have today, this is not necessarily the most fun part of doing a live stream. And we're speaking specifically about live streaming today and not video on demand or taping or recording your video and then putting it up on YouTube for later, or Vimeo or something for later use. Today, we're specifically talking about live streaming. Now, keep in mind, your live streams can always be repurposed on other platforms so that they become VOD or video on demand. But today, we're talking about the process of live streaming specifically, okay? So, selecting the topic. This is, again, it's not the most fun, it's not the sexiest thing, but it is critical if you are thinking about your audience. Okay, so let's talk about the process of selecting your topic. How do we do that? Do you want to start off, MC Curtis, and then I'll kind of jump in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, the first thing that we talked about in preparing for the show is that you want to start brainstorming. And if you don't know what brainstorming is essentially tossing out a bunch of ideas. You want to make sure you're writing those ideas down on paper. But again, brainstorming, tossing those ideas or writing those ideas on paper so that you have a plethora of ideas that you can, or angles that you can start that live stream from. So again, it is absolutely important to, again, just start from a lot of ideas, write them down. And again, that is going to be the brainstorming piece of it. And that's going to be the first thing that you're going to start with. And Tachi.
Yeah. So brainstorming is where that's one thing you start. Actually, before we get into the brainstorming part of it, there is something else, another place you can start. Sometimes you're like, okay, I really want to take advantage of this live streaming wave, but I don't know where to start. So this is where selecting a topic comes in. The best way, or the first way, is to start with you. So before you get into brainstorming other topics, sometimes we're so busy looking outside of ourselves that we don't consider that we are a plethora and a whole wealth of information within ourselves, right? So we talked about this earlier. We have, there's someone mutual, a member of the Mediascope family, the other show that I do, and she actually has Lyme disease. Well, this has become her thing. So she could have streamed about anything else. She could do social media about anything else, podcasts about anything else. But she started with something that was really personal to her, right? The fact that she has Lyme disease. And so she talks about research. She talks about tips and tricks. She talks about all the managing and dealing with Lyme disease. That's something that started by looking at herself and saying, what is it about me that I wish to share with the world, right? Rather than saying, what do I wish to share? She said, what is it about me that I wish to share with the world? So that is a way of coming up with topics. If you really want to do this and you don't know what to do, start with you. Start with, is there something interesting about myself? And I was also sharing with Curtis that I've been teaching public speaking for donkey's years now. And I had a student when I was teaching at George Washington University who had cerebral palsy. He did an entire speech on his cane. His cane. He started with himself, something that he needed in order to get along in life. And he talked about the construction of the cane, etc. Now, that's a small example, okay? And maybe you cannot do an entire series on canes. However, you could do maybe something related to that, or different apparatus that you use when you have cerebral palsy or things like that. So he started with himself. So start with you.
Absolutely. I think that's, you mentioned that again. You mentioned that during our preparation for the show here, is that I think that's really a good idea because often enough, as be it a live stream or doing a video or just in life in general, I don't think that we are interesting enough. And it's about storytelling. That's what all this is about. Be it your,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. So be it you doing a live stream or doing a video, something that's pre-recorded and that or live stream that later becomes video on demand, or you doing a podcast. It is essentially about telling a story. So you want to make sure that you are, again, preparing for the show. If you're going to write about yourself, again, you still need to start with yourself. You still need to brainstorm, right? Some different points that you
Yes.
want to talk about, but again, put them in some kind of order. So again, that you are, again, telling a story essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Your
yeah,
storytelling.
yeah,
Whenever you are going live or
absolutely,
whenever you're doing video, you are in the business of storytelling. I think this is what we
absolutely.
all remember. We don't think
Yes,
about it, right?
right.
We on a daily basis or whenever you're streaming, you're like, oh, you're not saying I'm a storyteller. Start thinking that way. That
Yes,
will transform the way you transmit your
right.
information. You start telling stories. Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Even if it's
absolutely,
news, you're still telling a story, are you not?
absolutely,
Maybe
absolutely.
you're telling other people's stories, but you're telling a story.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I like when you and I were working together on a project a little while ago. You're helping me with my speaking. Is that you were talking about how you want to start off with a question, perhaps for the audience. You know, much like just a presentation. So whether you're
Oh,
speaking in front of, see, I'm listening, I'm learning.
and
Yeah,
half the time I'm like, this man is not listening. You listen, sir. You have
absolutely,
listened and you learn.
absolutely, absolutely.
Grasshopper, well done.
Yes, yes, yes. So, yeah, I mean, really, but you want to start off with a question or something that's intriguing, or like often a fact about or fun fact about yourself, or something your audience didn't know about that particular niche or something that you're talking about. Again, start off with a question and put it out there, and then kind of fill in the blank, help them to fill in the blanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
key. That's key. Filling in the
Hmm.
blanks.
Hmm.
Great. All right. So, the first thing, and when you talked about the question, we're going to talk about that in a minute
Right.
when it comes to the actual outline. So, hold tight. See, you're there. You're right there with me. You're right there with me. All right. So, let me look at the room really quickly. And let's see. Jay has a question. He asks, "What is the best platform to use when you're doing live stream content?" Oh, wow,
Mm.
wow, wow, wow. Can we, Jay? Let's table that for a minute, and we'll come back to it at the end. Yes. What do you think, MC? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll come back to that at the end. Somebody remind me if somehow I forget, which is possible to do, but I want to come back to that because that is a very intriguing question. And Mark Ward, my favorite, is here on the Facebook Live side. Thank you for joining. Jay also asked, how do you protect your recorded live streaming content? And can
Mm.
you expand on that? Do you mean in terms of copyright and not having it repurposed by someone else? Put that in the chat and we'll come back to that after. And this goes for anyone. If you have a question, please ask in the chat because we would be happy to do this. So let's see. Oh, Steady Divine also says Curtis is so real.
That's funny. As
Afro
opposed
Ronda
to
Ray, welcome. Sorry, go ahead.
Mediascope, as opposed to Mediascope.
You're real on Mediascope too.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
Funny.
so in any case, let's go on. So the first way we have is start with you in terms of selecting a topic. Again, this is not the most exciting part of live streaming, but it is a necessary part of live streaming if you care about your audience. So the
Right,
second thing is brainstorming, right? This is huge. And
right,
I don't think that sometimes people understand what the process of brainstorming is like. And so Curtis already talked about what brainstorming is, the tossing out of ideas. But let's talk about the process. There
mhm,
is nothing stupid when you are brainstorming. So, in the process of brainstorming, throw out any and every idea that you think you may be interested in streaming and on something that you think you
right,
know about. Even if you in your head you're like, maybe I don't know about it. This is not the time to make
right,
those determinations. Throw
right,
out everything. come up with your list of things that you are interested in live streaming about. Okay.
Right.
Once you've ruled out that, oh, there's really nothing about myself that I want to live stream about, let me look at outside topics because I'm interested in this, right? So
Right.
also going back, starting with you is also starting with your expertise, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if
Great
you're
point.
already a CPA,
Great point.
why not stream on that, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes people are just tired of what they do and they don't want to talk about it anymore.
Hmm.
But if you're already an expert in something, start with you. Do that, right? So outside of looking at yourself, now you're brainstorming topics. You've thrown out everything to exhaustion, right? Be exhaustive in the process of throwing out everything, every idea. Then what you do is you take that list that you've created and pick 3. If you must pick 4, I will allow you to pick 4. However, take 3 of these ideas, your 3 top ideas, and then you start to deconstruct them. You could do this on a computer. You could do this on a piece of paper, on a whiteboard, a chalkboard. Pray tell if
Right.
anyone still has chalkboards.
Chalkboards.
Chalkboard. Well, it's really cool and ritzy now to have the black chalkboard wall, and some people
Hmm.
do that. Okay, so if you have a chalkboard wall, write out your ideas on there. Sticky notes, doesn't matter, just do it. So
Right.
take your top 3 ideas and start to deconstruct them. So maybe you're talking about, I'm picking something really simple: apples, oranges, and pears. Okay, you take apples, you're like, well, I really don't know that much about apples. I think I'm really more interested in the other 2. Voila, get rid of it.
Right.
Now
Right.
you're down to 2. Okay, there's a fly in here. Welcome to Florida in the summer. So of course it's in my face it was not here before, only when I started
Right. Right.
recording, right?
Right.
So there, you've got oranges and pears, right? And you're like, okay, between the 2, I know a lot about oranges and I know a lot about pears. However, it seems that a lot of people are talking about oranges. And if I talk about
Right.
pears, that's going to make me stand out from the pack. So I'm going to go with pears.
Right. Right.
Okay. So even though that's a simplistic idea, that is the process that you use to start to narrow down what you
Right.
would like to talk about.
Right.
Right.
And if I could
Go ahead.
add this really quick too, just
Please
that,
add.
just in addition to what you were saying about brainstorming, is that a lot of people don't understand what brainstorming is. It's just to say that brainstorming is essentially starting the conversation,
Hmm.
because sometimes it's difficult to say, well, okay, how do I how do I start this live stream, or how do I what am I going to talk about? So essentially, the brainstorming is just starting the conversation, and as Taki mentioned, or as I said earlier, tossing out ideas. And now, once you've got those ideas out, you're going to put them in some kind of order, or as Taki mentioned, get rid of what you're not an expert on, or just you don't feel comfortable talking about. But it's essentially starting a conversation, because it's very difficult to get on, or some people can, but it's difficult to get on and just start talking,
Hmm.
especially if you have nowhere to go. And people are like, "What are they talking about?" And that's not necessarily the ACA, the audience center approach that we're talking about. So with that, we're talking about making sure that you are prepared.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you've got your 3 things that you talk about, and you whittle them down to the one that you're talking about. And everything that Curtis said, you got to switch shows. Everything that Curtis said is right on point with that. So you can start to see that when we're asking live stream easy, that was, a leading question, because we know it's
Sure.
not easy. We know it's not easy. And we're
Absolutely.
trying to show you that there is a process and a method to all of this madness of live streaming. Let's see. Mark Ward says, I'd like to end conversations. I'm a conversation ender. You are. You also like to start them, Mark Ward.
I
Also,
is Mark Ward our local comedian?
I'm telling you, I'm waiting for your Netflix
He
special.
is hilarious.
Mark Ward is hilarious. I
Seriously.
don't know why you don't have a Netflix special as of yet, but we need to make that happen.
Yeah, he is
Jay, so
hilarious.
he is hilarious. So before I go on, I do want to address this question, the second part of the question that Jay had. He said, what I meant was, how is live streaming content saved, and how do you retrieve the live streaming content once it's saved? Okay, so this is multifaceted. I think we can give a quick answer to this. One thing, it depends on what platforms you're streaming
Right.
to. So if you're streaming to something like a Facebook Live or a YouTube, They are already saving your things. This is why you have a replay and you
Right.
are able to download it. So it's not just enough to have a replay, because Periscope, you can't download anything. You have a
Mhm.
replay, but it's not downloadable. On YouTube, you can download your content
Right.
once you've done your live stream. On Facebook, you can download your content once you've done your live stream. I believe it is the same on Twitch. I am not a Twitch
Right.
expert, but
Right.
I think that is the case. MC Curtis can probably give some more information. For example, screen recorders, you could kind of do the same thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And yeah, in answer to the question, as far as uh, you, there's a quality, like for instance, like one of the things, or in addition to what Tachi was saying, is that if you're sending 720 or 1080p to Facebook, you want to be mindful is that once you're downloading it from Facebook, you're only going to get like 640 by 360.
So explain to them what that is for people who are not understanding resolution.
Right, right. Resolution is going to be the uh, uh, the pixels for is it every square inch, Tachi?
Hmm.
Yeah, for
Hmm.
every square inch, you've got 640 pixels by um, 360 or 1280 by 720. So you've got
Hmm.
1280 wide and 720 high. So that's
So the
going to be the
more
pixel.
pixels you have
Right.
per
Square inch.
square area
Yeah,
is the sharper your image will be.
exactly.
So think about 4K, that's 4,000
1000. Right.
pixels
Right.
per square area, which means it's really sharp. They were up to 16K now. We're not using
Wow.
it, but we've got
Jeez.
16K. So I saw this like 4 or 5 years ago at NAB,
Wow.
a 16K camera. So that means it's like you're there.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like reach out and touch someone for real.
Exactly. But one thing you have to think about with all this, Jay, is storage.
Yeah,
So if again, when you download it, it's going to be downgraded, definitely. But
absolutely.
when you stream, because there are some platforms that support 4K streaming, but where are you going to store all this?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's something you have to think about as well, storage.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jay, for that question. And anyone else who has a question on any platform, whether it's YouTube, yeah, we're on YouTube too. YouTube, Periscope, or Facebook Live. Please ask. We are happy to answer them. So going on with, am I good to go on? Anything else to
Absolutely.
add? Okay.
Absolutely.
So going on with this and throwing out the process and brainstorming, once you've done that and you come up with, or you haven't come up with a topic, there's another way. Usually between the first two, you're able to come up with something. And generally, I'll say this, many people who are live streaming saw the technology and kind of had an idea of what they wanted to do initially.
Mhm.
But this is if you have no idea, but you really want to take advantage of this trend. So the next thing that you have to do is keep up with headlines. You
Absolutely.
may not know what you want to do by looking at yourself. You may not be able to brainstorm something to do. But if you are a constant reader of headlines and know what's going on in the world, something may jump out at you like, oh my gosh, this is a great topic. I think I really want to explore this a little bit more. And you're able to do that because you're paying attention to what's happening in the world. You're paying attention to headlines. So doing that research and paying attention to headlines, you can get all sorts of things sent to you. Every single subject has some sort of newsletter. You could even get, newsletters that are pop culture, etc., sent to you. And through that, and looking at the multitudes of topics out there or multitudes of stories, that may spark an idea for a topic for you. So don't discount paying attention to what's happening in the world via local headlines, or not just local, but headlines in terms of coming up with a topic.
Absolutely. And I would add to what you mentioned about the keeping up with the headlines is that in most cases, your audience, they're likely to be keeping up with the headlines. And if they're not, you come off as, or at least appear to them as a person who knows what they're talking about, an authority in that space. Again, just keeping up with the headlines, knowing what you're talking about, and just having those key points and things that they should know, and the same questions you may have, your audience in a lot of ways will have also. So if you can answer those questions as you are keeping up with the headlines, and you create content around that particular headline, and you are able to answer those questions, you are certainly going to look like a professional to your audience. So I think that's important. And that's what all this is
Absolutely.
about, your storytelling and coming off as the professional or as the go-to person in that particular niche.
And you know what, MC Curtis, you just yeah, that's good. That's hard for me to switch. I'm going to do it.
It's all
So,
good.
Curtis, you also brought up something, asking people, couldn't you do
Absolutely.
surveys to
Absolutely, Tati.
find out what people want to hear about?
Yes, that's good.
Do surveys, right?
Hmm.
Get with another live stream. So say you don't have a live stream, but you are, this is another reason to go into other people's live streams. This
Yes,
world is collaborative. So you can't just all of a sudden expect to get an audience and expect to get people when you don't go in anybody else's live streams and you don't support them. So this
absolutely.
world works through supporting each other and through collaboration. So if there's a live streamer that you are pretty good and pretty friendly with, go in and ask, hey, or ask them offline, hey, would you, I'm trying to start live streaming myself, but I want to get an idea of what people think. Would you mind if I asked for people to take a survey that I've made up on SurveyMonkey or Google Forms?
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. And just real quick too, just to I mean, here's the thing. There's so much that you can do in the area of grabbing content or doing your research. Is that if you've got viewers, your audience are engaged with your show, they're asking questions. If you're not able to answer those questions, perhaps next week or the following subsequent shows, you can actually answer those questions and do a
Exactly.
show around that particular topic. And as Tachi mentioned, you can also watch other people's live streams and get the questions that other people are asking and answer those questions. Because if that particular broadcaster is not answering those questions, guess what? People are going to go elsewhere.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Pay attention, audience-centered approach. Your
Yeah.
audience
Absolutely.
already has an idea of what they
Absolutely.
would like to know, or once they start watching you, they'd like, they may like to know things. So for example, that's why we're saying ask us questions. And even
Yes.
if you don't have a question right now, but you think of it after the fact, put it in the chat here. Tweet at us. We'll give you all the social media handles and everything afterwards. Absolutely. So, think about those things and it's live streams work by also having a participatory audience.
Yes.
So, but you have to make the atmosphere participatory. You have to
Absolutely.
make them feel like they matter and they count, right? So, hey,
Absolutely.
Gary Lanham, how are you? Gary Lanham is over here on the Facebook Live side. Welcome. And hi, Curtis Brooks Media Productions.
Hey
Welcome.
there.
A Train Live. Welcome on the Periscope side. There are a bunch of you over here. Live streaming is the way to go, says Gary. Absolutely. He knows this. He is a huge video person. In fact, he is now known as the go-to video person in real estate. He is the video realtor, basically.
Yeah. So
Just landed.
he
Wow.
snagged that title, huh?
He snagged that time. Well, and see, okay, so perfect. Thank you for bringing this up, Gary.
Hmm.
Perfect, because he saw where the dearth or
Yes.
lack was in his space, he filled it. That's what you
Absolutely.
have to do. That's another way to come up with a topic. Watch live streams. First of all, you can't live stream if you have not been watching live streams.
Right.
I think it is foolish to do so. Watch one at
Absolutely.
least, please.
Absolutely.
Can you watch at least one or two? But
Right. Right.
watch one damn live stream. But
Right.
once you've done that, you and watch a few. I'm before I did anything, I sat for like 2 months and watched what people were doing. That's what let me know what was missing in the space, and that became my topic. So your topic can also be what's not being talked about, what is missing in the space. Gary is now the authority on video in real estate because other realtors, simply get afraid to use it. They may not want to make the investment. They
Right.
are afraid. Everybody is afraid of
Right.
change, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Not Gary Lanham.
Well, and it's interesting because it's at a place now. I think that whether you have a business, be it a small business, medium business, or large, somewhere in between, it's gotten to a place where it's that if you're not doing some kind of video or live stream, and to clearly understand that if you can do a Google search at any time and find out what are the numbers, and they're out there. available to the public in regards to, I mean, what percentage of people are live streaming and how are people consuming their content? And you'll find out that people are consuming content through video. And they're obviously still reading, but not as much. And so if you can give them
Not as
snippets,
much.
if you can give people snippets of your content or what you're selling or what your business is about, they're going to love you for it because they simply don't have time or don't want to make time. They just want a snapshot of what you do or what your discussion is.
Look, for everything in this, but you will always have
Yeah,
a purpose and you will always have a job and you can always monetize here. Why? Simply because the majority of the people are not going to do this.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
that's your in right there. That the majority of
Yes.
people will not take the time to do this. So if you
Yes.
do it, there are people that will pay to get the information or pay for you to
Absolutely.
do this for them. You understand what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? So that's what
Yeah.
you have to look. Not only what is missing in the space, but the fact, think about the fact that other people are not going to do this, but they'll watch it.
Absolutely.
How many people do we know on these platforms that have an account and watch but don't live stream?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So the amount of people that actually stream is nowhere near the amount of people that actually use the platforms.
Right. Right.
So think about that. You are in an exclusive club when you do that. Leverage it, leverage it,
Absolutely.
leverage it. Let me go to the room for a moment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And Gary, thank you very much for the kind words on Periscope. Mark Ward is the comedian ever and says, if I would have an audience-centered approach if I had one, since I'm my own best audience, I just talk to myself in the mirror. Thank you, Mark Ward. But you know what? The funny thing is that's how you start. That's actually how you start. When you're practicing for these types of things, you start by talking. You can talk to yourself in the mirror. It's always best to have a live audience, but start by talking to yourself in the mirror. That's how you practice for this. So one last thing that we're going to talk about before I get to actually putting this together, because we're running short on time, is trends, right?
Right.
This is
Absolutely.
something that Curtis brought up.
Hmm.
Keeping up with the trends, knowing and understanding trends, that is a way to determine what you're going to speak about. That is a way to gain a purposeful presentation, right?
Absolutely. 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 Yeah. I think it is absolutely crucial to be important, or excuse me, to be mindful of the trends because you can typically use the hashtag, but you have to be kind of just understand that if your content does not line up with the hashtag, you're probably not going to get a lot of reach there. And initially, you may, but people will get upset because wait a minute, okay, they're in the news that's trending about a particular senator, and if your video, you can put a spin on it, if you will, and have a conversation, and you can mention certain things related to a particular trend. Again, you can spin it your story in any kind of way, but if your content or your video, that live stream is uh, essentially not about that particular trend, it's kind of looked at as a negative mark. So make sure that if you are going to follow a trend through a hashtag or something, make sure that your video is really kind of the good part of your video is about that particular hashtag, so people
Yes.
aren't just coming to a a blank space, if you will, meaning that that content does not match up with the hashtag and it's just totally not relevant.
It's like clickbait.
Yeah, exactly, Taki.
It's
Exactly.
essentially clickbait.
Exactly.
So you want to make
Exactly.
sure that what like Curtis said, make sure that your hashtags align with what you're talking about.
Right.
Don't use it as a way to gain other people.
Yes.
Don't put Beyonce in there and you're talking about public accounting
Right.
because you want
Right.
to get a whole bunch of people to
Right.
look
Right.
at your content.
Absolutely.
It's false advertising, fake news. Don't do that. Don't do that. You want to make sure that whatever your hashtags you're using, and all use hashtags when you're promoting these things on social media. Make sure you're using the correct hashtags. And there are, this is again another topic altogether.
Right.
There are all sorts of hashtag generators that you can use to
Right.
generate hashtags relevant to your video's topic.
Right.
Also, you can, when you start to type in hashtags, for example, on Instagram, it will pop, they'll start to pop up.
Right.
One thing to think about when you're using a hashtag, you're going to see, okay, if you use, video,
Right.
there are probably like 10 million
Right.
hashtags you with the word video in it.
Exactly. And
You could put it there, but you probably may not get found. What you
right.
want to do is use something a little more specific. So if
Exactly.
you use something like, okay, let's just say video maker, that may only have 10,000. That's a better place for you to be found than among 10 million.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So it doesn't mean don't use that other hashtag, but keep in mind you only have a limited amount of hashtags that you can use that will either count against your word count on Twitter. You can only use 30 up to 30 on Instagram, and it just looks too messy if you have too many. So think about that. That's a different thing. So trends, keeping up with the trends. Very good, MC Curtis. So the last thing we want to talk about today, we ready to talk about outline?
Absolutely.
Now I have to apologize because I sent it to you, but it didn't go through. So you probably didn't get it. So next week before we start, we will pop up the outline so you can see. But what I'm going to do is just go through and explain it to you today. An outline. Yes, brothers and sisters, you need to have some
Right.
plan as to what you're going to say. Now, there are very few people who can speak off the cuff all the time without planning, and it sounds intelligible and it's great. Most people are not that. Okay, so you need to plan. Even if let me tell you, my favorite public speaker in the graduate program, the PhD program, one of my favorite professors, Dr. Richard Wright, we had a 3-hour course with him. We were there from 6 to 9, right? He will come to class with like one piece of paper. One piece of paper and like a couple words written down, but lecture for the whole 3 hours, and it would be fire.
Right.
Everybody in my class always talked about Dr. Wright comes to class with one piece of paper, but he can teach. Okay. So there are very few people that are like that.
Right.
If you're like this, good for you. Probably more than likely, no, you still have to plan like we all do. So let's talk about planning. Part of what we could do is an outline, and you can modify your outline for whatever. It could be a list of topics, but what works well for people that aren't used to doing this is doing a nice intensive outline. So before I go into it, let me say hello to Levok and hello to Mr.
Hey,
Card
Levok.
Logic. Yes, over on the Troublemaker number 2 is here over on the Periscope side. Thank you so much. And let's see. Mark Ward, okay, Mark Ward, this is interesting that you said, are you speaking of trends or topics? Trends can be topics, right? You could speak on trends in an industry. A particular trend could spark something in your mind as to an interesting trajectory to talk about for a live stream. So trends and topics can be two separate things, but trends can be topics, right? Topics can also be trends. Think about trending topics on Twitter, right?
Right.
So something to think about. Something to think about. Thank you for asking that or putting that out there, Mark Ward. So let's talk about outline really quickly before we vamoose. Am I good?
Absolutely.
Okay. So your outline is your way to keep everything together, not only for you, but so that your audience can follow what you're saying.
Absolutely.
If they can't follow what you're saying, forget it. Hang it up. Go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Okay, pack up and go home. So it becomes a waste of their time. And one thing again, ACA, audience-centered approach, you want to make sure you are also not wasting your audience's time. They've taken time away from their dinner or lunch or laying on the beach, whatever else they could be doing to listen to you. Respect that and say thank you. And I'm thanking you by making sure all my stuff is in order. You do this with an outline. So the first thing you want to do is name your broadcast. This may not work for every single type of broadcast, but name it. I'm going to give you an example. One podcast that I listen to. I listen to a lot of podcasts. One podcast I listen to is called The Read, and they actually name their episodes. So I don't remember the names of their episodes, but what I just gave an example like "Girl Bye." Okay.
Yeah, but that's why I was laughing earlier when we were
Okay. So the example of their one episode could be like the episode for this week could be called "Girl Bye," and "Girl Bye" me could be we're talking about dismissing people and cancel culture. You guys have heard about the concept of cancel culture, right? So "Girl Bye" talking about cancel culture. So that lets people know you're talking about either a person you're dismissing or people you're dismissing, right?
right,
In vernacular. And when you go back, because where did I talk about such and such got canceled out? Oh, "Girl Bye." That
right,
helps
right,
you, okay, to keep track of what you've talked about before. So name your episodes just like you would name a child. It gives your live stream
right.
purpose.
Exactly. And it actually even makes it fun too. So your audience
Yeah,
can just kind of, and I wrote down just having a broadcast that's memorable for your audience. So they can,
exactly.
they can just kind of relate to what your discussion is about. And it means something to them. What I was going to say something, I lost my train of thought, but all right, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, it'll come back. Stop
Yeah.
me when it comes back. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Okay, so after you've got the title for your outline. The next thing you want to do, Curtis talked about this before, engage your audience.
Right.
Audience engagement could be a number of things. It could be like what I do at the beginning of Mediascope is I welcome everyone into the broadcast. I say, hey, and they say hi back. I'm getting you to be engaged because I've called you by name. I've
Right.
let you know I see you. I see that you're here. I appreciate you. I'm giving you a shout out. That's engagement. You can ask a question, right? How many of you have gone to the mall in the past 3 months, right? Now, depending on what you're talking about. And when you say, you often hear people say, if you're hearing what I'm saying or you understand what I'm saying, put a 1 in the chat, right?
Right.
You
Right.
don't have to do those kind of tricks, but that is a method of engagement as well. Getting
Absolutely.
people to get involved, right?
Absolutely. And I would add to just just
Ask.
ask questions because again, that's part of the engagement process
Hmm.
is not only checking to see if there's a if there's a pulse on the other end
And
on
not
the other end,
crickets.
right on the end of the other end of the live stream, but again, just to, as Taji mentioned, to engage. You got your outline, you've got your outline, you've got a memorable name for your particular discussion, and now you have the engagement piece of it. So it's either type of one, type two, or not, or just again asking questions so that your audience.
Levi typed a 1. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, no, but you're absolutely
Yeah,
right. Asking questions is a way of doing this. All of this is called an attention getter. That's what you
absolutely.
start off what your outline with. Get your audience in because if you don't get them in within the first few seconds, you lose them really quickly. Gary says it's really hard at first. I guess live streaming and getting people involved. And then he says, plus getting over yourself takes time. It
Right,
does. It
right.
does. It does.
That's good. That's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Gary. Spot on. So after you've got your attention getter, the first thing you need to do is to introduce what your topic is. So
Mm,
basically, it's an introduction. What
right,
is it you're talking about today? And what is it that you want your audience to come away
right.
with, right?
Absolutely.
So the what is it you want your audience to come away with is more for you, but what you're talking about is for your audience, right? And what you need to do is summarize your points. Try and pick no more than 3 main points.
Right,
You can have a bunch of sub points under that, but your 3 main points you have, let's go with apples, oranges, and pears. So in your introduction, hey everyone, welcome to the such and such live stream. I'm
right,
your host, Tachi. I am here because today we're going to talk about 3 things. I'm really interested in giving you information on apples, oranges, and pears. So that's what we're going to do today. Now your audience knows what you're going to talk about. They
right,
know what to expect, right?
right,
Again, you can modify this. This doesn't necessarily work verbatim in every single situation, but this is a place to start, right? So you've given your introduction. The first thing you have is your main point 1, and your main point 1 is apples. You talk about a couple of points, I would say 3 points or whatever under apples that you want them to learn. You transition to the next thing. So, all right, we finished up with apples. I am so excited to talk to you about oranges. That is your transition sentence. You transition in between each part of your outline. The next thing is your main point too. Oranges, right? So you talk, you have your oranges, your main point, and then 3 or whatever sub points underneath oranges and talk about that. Oranges are great. Oranges are oranges. Oranges are, juicy.
Or
Whatever
round.
you're going to talk about. What did you say?
They're round.
They're round. There you go. There you go.
To add to what you're saying, I think it's also important that transition. So you want to
Yeah.
make you can talk about apples, oranges, and pears, but you want to make sure that once you are once you have completed your 3 different points for your orange section or your apple section, you want to make sure that you are, again, have a nice transition, nice smooth transition into that next topic, because you don't want to. It's like I think having a bad transition is, for me, it's like having someone standing at the edge of a cliff, no way to connect the dots, if you will,
Mm.
or connect, or without a bridge, if you will.
Without a
So,
bridge. Yes,
yeah.
exactly. It's
So,
like you trying to jump 75 feet to that next cliff
right,
and there's no
right,
bridge. You can't do it. You have to
exactly,
smoothly transition because that lets your audience know what to expect next. Even
exactly,
though you've told them in your intro you're going to talk about these 3 things, they don't
right,
know when it's coming. So
right,
when you say, all right, in your nice smooth transition, now we've sufficiently covered apples, I'm ready to talk about oranges. Put a 1
right.
in the chat if you want to talk about oranges. They know you're
For
going to
2,
talk about oranges at that point,
right,
right?
right, right.
Absolutely.
Well,
Um,
something you said, Tachi, as well, during when you were helping me with my speaking, is that you want to tell them what you're going to talk about. You want to uh, I think it was break down the points, or just kind of outline what you're going to talk about, and
mhm.
then you want to tell them again.
Yes, exactly. Well,
Kind
and
of
that's
just
what we're coming to.
right.
That's what we're coming to.
Hmm.
So once you've got your 3 main points, main point 1, 3 sub points, main
Right.
point 2, 3 sub points, main point 3, 3 sub points. You may not have 3. You may
Right.
have more than 3, but keep in mind how many you have needs to be allotted to the time you have.
Right. Right.
Respect your audience's time, which
Right.
we're not doing today. We're way over. But anyway, I digress. So before I get back to the chat and questions, let's finish this up. So after you transition in between each point so they know where you're going, your audience knows where you're going.
Right.
Then finally, after that, you transition to what Curtis was talking about. Tell them what you talked about, your summary. Summarize what you talked about. So today I gave you some great information on apples. We covered all the ins and outs of oranges, and we talked about what's coming up with pears. So if you want more information on this, make sure you email me, follow me, whatever it is you're going to do. You have a nice little summary because you've mentioned several times at this point, you've
Right.
mentioned these in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, right?
Right.
Twice in a block, 3 times individually. You think your audience is not going to remember when you keep saying it over and over?
Right.
This works by repetition. Capiche?
Absolutely.
There we go. There we go. So that is your outline. Next week, we'll actually have a physical copy of it. So if you want, you can take a screenshot. Again, modify it for your needs. If you have
Right.
this, though, every time you speak, you could just plug this stuff in, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just kind of have a worksheet, if you will.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So that can definitely help.
Absolutely. So let me before we go, take some. So Gary Lanham says he has a couple of things he
Yeah.
puts out there. Who are you and how can I help you? That's a good thing to think about, definitely. What is authentic to you that will allow you to help another? Yes, remember, it's not about you. Audience-centered approach. You're there to help, right?
Yeah.
In whatever way.
To clarify what I was saying there, thanks, Mark Ward. He says on Facebook here, he says, tell them what you were going to tell them. Tell them what you told them.
Exactly.
So, yeah, thank you.
That's what the outline is.
Absolutely.
The introduction. Tell them what you're going to tell them. The body. Tell them. The summary. Tell them what you told them.
Right.
Exactly. Excellent, Mark Ward. That's what that is.
Mhm.
That's what it is. So T T T T. That's a whole bunch of T's.
Right,
So
right.
that's we'll have to make it nicer. So Gary also says, "What is the problem? How do you solve it? And who
Right,
can you help? Who
right.
can help you solve it? Ooh, who can help you
Yeah,
solve
that's
it?"
that's really good because I think that was Gary mentioned earlier about getting past yourself. I think that if we understand is for those people who have businesses or you want to do again a live stream or create a video that is audience center approach, you want to remember that you're solving a problem, and I think when you come from that perspective of that or that understanding that you're solving a problem, it's a lot more easier to step out of your own way because now
Mhm.
you're giving information and you know that people because rest assured if you have a question a lot of times many people have the same question that you're having but you're the expert about it and you can share that information with them and you can answer their questions and solve their problems for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Levox says, "Don't be fake. Be 100% real and
Right.
honest." Yes.
Yes.
And Bobber, welcome on the Periscope side. So you know what? See, this is what this is all about. You see the way you all participated today,
Right.
and MediaScope people always participate. So this is what I'm used to. But it makes you feel good as a live streamer when you are able to engage your audience and they actually speak back and
Right.
they're giving you what you're doing is like you're the hallelujah corner. You're like, yes, and
Right.
this, and yes, and that. And then, there are some things that we may not know that you put out there, that we can
Right.
incorporate. It's a learning experience for everyone. So
Right.
it should be mutually beneficial for all parties involved,
Right.
meaning the live streamer and the audience.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think too is that it's also important. The engagement is hugely, I mean, super important. And sometimes we can be, and I think for me was one of my challenges. I've kind of gotten past that now, but you can create an outline and you can be so focused about getting those points across or speaking to what you wrote down in your paper that you neglect to engage with the audience. And if you don't finish that outline or complete what you're saying or your show as you've outlined it, you can always do a part two.
Nobody, the outline police is not coming to arrest
Absolutely,
you because you didn't finish
absolutely,
your outline. The live
absolutely.
streaming police is not shutting you
Right,
down because you
right,
didn't finish your outline. Here's what you have to know as well. These are the differences between live streaming
right,
and traditional broadcast TV. You want to respect your audience, and it's good to keep in mind that television started in such a way and it's very outlined, but you also have to know this is live streaming. You have a little bit more leeway
yeah,
than you do with television, right? You could take a little
yeah,
more liberties. Use that. If you don't finish, okay, we're going to do this next time. That is
absolutely.
okay. That is 100% okay. You don't have to use every aspect of the outline. It's a good outline, meaning you don't have to have
Right,
all the different sub points and all the different main points. If you only have two, do that. If you have
right,
one, do that and explain it thoroughly. Whatever
absolutely.
the case is, keep your audience in the front of your mind at all time. There is one thing I have to do before we go. I forgot to start with an interesting fact.
Okay.
You don't sound excited.
No, I'm waiting for it.
Okay. You're like, okay, if you must. Well,
No,
I'm
no,
doing it anyway.
no.
So the fact, I like to liken this to television because television is the precursor to all this. So today is June 27th. Guess what today happened today in television history?
Hmm. Man on the moon with the television or something like that. Didn't he bring a TV to the moon?
No, no,
Oh,
but
oh.
that's a terrible guess. But thank you. So, scientists at Bell Laboratories in New York revealed a system for transmitting color television pictures. This happened in
Oh,
1929.
interesting.
1929. So remember last week I told you Philo Farnsworth invented, he's the
Yes.
father of modern television, of television basically. Well, this was in the early 20 well, this was in the 30s actually, but in 1929 they discovered a system for transmitting color television pictures. Now we know we didn't get color TV really until the 1960s.
Right.
Okay. So, but it was all those years ago in 1929 today that they developed it.
Absolutely. Awesome. That's awesome. So that's why
Great.
you can see my blue shirt and your Yeah, that's really
That's
cool.
why you can see the black. Anyway, and all the different colors. So
Right,
thank you to
right,
Bell
right.
Laboratories for and everybody else involved for that.
Yeah,
So
Mark
with
Ward, you are hilarious, man.
oh gosh, is Mark Ward
Yeah, Facebook. I'm I'm doing a barely a live stream. Watch me breathe and hope that some inspiration arrives.
I would get inspiration from watching Mark Ward breathe. I really would. Wow.
Uh,
So thank you everybody for being here. We went instead of a half hour today, we went for an hour.
wow,
Yeah, that was not our original intention, but it is what it is. And we thank you all for being here and
absolutely.
putting up with our overtime. And we hope you enjoyed. And you know what? Tell them where they can find you, Curtis.
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook at Curtis Brooks Media Productions, or at least the ad symbol Curtis Brooks Media Pro on Facebook. Also on Twitter at Curtis Brooks Media Pro, and I think on yeah, that's it. That's good enough.
Okay, and you know where to find me, but if
Yeah,
not, I'll tell you on Instagram. I am Dr. underscore Tachi, Tachi. Here on Periscope, for those of you on Periscope, I am at Tachiada, at Tachiada. That's also my handle on Twitter. On Facebook, you can reach me on the Mediascope page at Mediascope16. And with that, we're done.
absolutely. It's been a great show.
It
Any
has.
last? I'm going to ask you any last words, Dr. Tachi?
Yes, don't look for any fancy music. We're just going to put up the show card and go.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, no bells and whistles. So,
Oh, wait. Levok asks, what's in your filing cabinets?
oh, that's actually a lot of gear.
It's gear because he's got it like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of gear and cables and stuff. But all right, guys. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Cheers.